on, I think it was number 9 on your list, or whatever it was, but this idea, this opportunity for Jackson Family Wines to create this goodwill and leadership that goes outside the just what you guys are doing and even to your growers, but how that could extend all the way to the consumer and the trade, being the on-premise, off-premise. We see a great opportunity here to help empower the community who are interested in them getting involved and doing things through your leadership, and just by leading by example. And I wanted to get your thoughts on that. Ken, did you have a comment in terms of that too?
Yeah, so it's not just the upstream, growers, but it's also downstream, how we can empower people, be a leader and a participant in the larger community. We don't want to preach or moralize or anything, but just showcase opportunities for people to access the ways that they can get involved on their own, all the way down the supply chain.
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1 million question, right? One of the things that we're doing, and I don't know how relevant it is to this work, but Kendall Jackson is partnering. Amy, have you talked with these guys about the Net Impact partnership?
No, I've not.
Okay. So just real quick, we're sponsoring a business case challenge with Net Impact, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with that organization. They're based in San Francisco, but they're the largest organization of kind of purpose-driven undergraduate and graduate students. And so college and university campuses all over the country have these Net Impact chapters, and they engage them in various different business case challenges. And so we are sponsoring one that essentially asks the question of, what is KJ doing right and what are we doing wrong in terms of how we market to the next generation of consumers. And we're going to be kind of doing a national competition, accepting marketing plans and whatnot over the course of the next 6 months, and then having the top 3 or 4 marketing plans come out and submit and present to our executive team. And then from there, hiring 2 summer interns to help kind of, roll out their plans. So that was kind of one of the ways that as we were looking through it and trying to figure out how we make our sustainability, and I should say that this whole focus is really on how we tell our sustainability story to the next generation for Kendall Jackson, and not necessarily just any story, but it's how deeply embedded sustainability is in the brand, and how do we make people care about it, and do they care about it, and why. And so we're looking at that as an opportunity to have this target market really share their thoughts on what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong, and how we could more appropriately and effectively communicate to this emerging generation of consumers whose parents all drank Kendall Jackson and made us the #1 Chardonnay. Mm-hmm. So I think that's just it may be a bit of a tangent, but it's a way that we're kind of looking to make connection a little bit more. As far as what we can do to bring our sustainability efforts more into a place where they are active as opposed to passive for the consumer and for the trade. I mean, I think that's kind of a challenge that I personally struggle with every day. So I don't know that I know the answer to that.
Okay,
question.
Good. I'm glad you said that, because it's obviously, you hit the nail on the head when you said that's the $1 million question, because we know there's some there's some good stuff there, because we know there's a lot of people that care. There's a lot of on-premise operators that will be, the whole value chain. So that's TBD. That's a continued dialogue. We're thinkers and tinkerers on that. My last question to you that I wanted to get your comments
on that real quick though. On that point, so we've done some internal research that Karen Danon has led on our team, that is, and she's kind of queried some of the various different opinion polls and whatnot. And one of them, from a year or two ago, from one of the Wine Opinions trade polls, and I don't know if you guys follow those, but there was a very interesting juxtaposition that we're seeing that shows that our colleagues in the wine trade are increasingly interested in sustainable wines, particularly those that have some sort of a third-party certification and an independent verification, and yet they still haven't figured out how to sell those wines to the consumer. Okay. So there's this interesting juxtaposition there where they want more sustainable wines, but they really don't know how the hell to sell them.
Good. Okay. We only have a couple more minutes. My last question to you was, you said something that really resonated towards us when we were hanging out with you, and it had a little bit to do with like the idea that it was a little bit about it was a hacker statement that every day, it's kind of a new day that you try to figure things out, and it's a trial and error, and all of this is about that. And do you remember when you said that? It was almost like, to me, it was like, how to, it was like a hacker mentality idea that you had with sustainability, that it's nobody really knows the answers, and you try to figure them out as you go.
Yep. Yeah. And there's a saying that we always floated around in my business school, which was a program in San Francisco that was focused on integrating sustainability principles into business. And the saying was focused, it basically said that none of us is as smart as all of us. And I think when you think about sustainability within the context of business, there's a nature of pre-competitiveness to it. So I have really good relationships with my sustainability colleagues, not just at other wine companies, but at other beverage companies, at other CPG companies, across the spectrum. And the work that we engage in is really focused on how do we create, how do we leverage the power of business to create a brighter future for our children and our children's children. And, in the mind's eye of all of us working in this space, if there's a good idea to be had, then that should be open sourced, because everybody can benefit from it. And as a result, the environment and society benefits. And I think you'll see that in some of these sustainability working groups that have emerged, both in wine and in business. But there is certainly this air of cooperation as opposed to competitiveness. Now, how we go about telling those various different stories when the marketing and the communications people get their hands on it, that's still very hush hush, closed door. So, but it's interesting in terms of doing the work and focusing on developing solutions that will kind of help us all. It's very cooperative.
Good. All right.
Very
well,
cool.
Listen, I think that this is just the beginning of our conversations. We have to jump off, because we have, who do we have right now?
We're speaking to Julia now.
We're speaking to Julia Jackson right now. And I guess, how do we do that if we're still in the same...
Well, if we ended, I was thinking we can just call Amy again and she can dial Julia in.
Right. Amy?
I know that Julia's planning to call in on the conference line, so let's stick with that.
Okay.
So we should hang up and dial back in. I've been waiting on Julia. Sorry, you can probably hop off.